So what we'll do is welcome everybody to the 6:30 Committee of the Whole meeting. The dapper young man dressed in the audience, Noah Northrum, is an 11th grader at Sacred Heart Academy on the west side, and through the American Legion, which some of us recognize, Bill Parsons sitting to his left, a Walker resident, was asked to actually host Noah for this afternoon into this evening as part of the Boys State program is what it's called. And so we've toured the city. We just had a little dinner in the other room and learned a little bit about city government. He's going to share a few words of things, his takeaways for the day when we get done shortly. But that being said, we've got a couple of discussion items on the Committee of the Whole. But first, Commissioner Groders, you have something you would like to share from MML.
Yes, I was at MML and they did the Community Excellence Awards, and the four finalists were all really amazing. But I just was wanting to get us inspired by watching Sterling Heights' little video, and then also the winner, Rochester Hills.
Okay. All right. And there we go.
As Sterling Heights neared its 50th year, Sterling Heights wanted residents to look to our future and engage with their city in recreating recreation. The heart of recreating recreation is our 98,000 square foot community center, a resource for multiple sectors of our community, featuring a public community room, gymnasium, walking track, dedicated dance and fitness rooms, a teen room, tot room, and more. Other recreating recreation amenities include a splash park young families can take advantage of on a hot summer day, a farmer's market pavilion that transforms into an ice rink for wintertime family fun, a skate park offering teens an unstructured but safe and positive way to spend their free time, a bocce ball court providing low-impact activity for seniors that protects them from the elements, multiple paddle landing spots providing barrier-free access for everyone to the most family-friendly section of the Clinton River, a dog park where our four-legged friends of all sizes can enjoy some off-leash activity, and refurbishments and added amenities to our 31 parks and green spaces. Recreating recreation has helped Sterling Heights remain the type of community where people from across the region want to come, whether just for the day or for the rest of their lives.
All right. Wonderful.
That was their little promo video.
And who did win that? Was it Rochester? Okay.
Yeah. Pretty amazing.
Oh, I see that. Sterling Heights online vote winner. You know, it did two larger communities, but I don't think we can get lost in that because the context of what they're trying to do, we can make proportionate to the city of Walker. And as we look at the, a potential community center next door and adding on, I mean, this is some of the things that we have to start reimagining. So, thank you for sharing. Good stuff. All right, we'll come back to MML comments then when we get to Commissioner City Manager comments. So let's, in the meanwhile, jump into our draft Parks and Recreation resolutions. First item on there. Have some dialogue around this. I'm assuming everybody's had a chance to read through this at this point, and get some comments. So I'm going to open up for the group. And first off, as I go to tee that up to Commissioner Glanville and our Assistant City Manager Walsh, outstanding job. There was a lot. This is a committee, for those that have not been around, that has been somewhat disbanded for a number of years. And I think its last coming together was basically an ad hoc committee with some of the challenges we had with the park out back and working with the school and what does this look like going forward with even the bus garage lands and so forth. So it's kind of an ad hoc committee, and I don't think it's what it was truly intended to be, but it served its purpose. So kind of that mission that we had asked Commissioner Glanville to take on, along with support from city staff, was kind of reinvent this thing, and if it means to disrupt it and start over from scratch, then so be it. So a lot of work's been done to this point. I'll turn over to the two of you and kind of lead through comments, and we can offer feedback and questions probably at that point.
Yeah, so I just want to say thanks to everyone who's been involved in, looking at this and giving input and conversation around, some of the wordsmithing and things like that. I had the opportunity to speak with a few staff members who are directly involved. I mean, I think many staff members are directly involved in the operation of our parks and our recreation programming, but talk to a couple of the more key players, especially in the recreation area, to just make sure that we were hitting the mark for them as well. So, I think you've all had a chance to look over it, so I just want to maybe go through where there are still some questions and then see if you have anything you want to add. Or So first, one of the open items is on page 2 under section 4, terms and conditions. Items, what would that be, 13 and 14? So this is talking about the makeup of the committee. And so we're looking at a couple of things that were added in on item 2 is just our efforts to ensure that the committee reflects the diversity across the city, and that might be age, gender, race, income, all those. So just having an eye on that to make sure that everybody ability, has some say in what we're doing. Let me see, what else did we have in here? So how often the meetings are, and then moving down into, like I said, items 13 and 14, I think it's important for people as they're coming into the committee to understand what the full commitment is. So beyond, monthly meetings, if we're going to do the kind of work that the committee charge is calling for here, we need to make sure that committee members are engaged beyond the meetings. We're going to want support for our city programs and the activities and events and all the good stuff. So for example, Pumpkin Bash and the summer concerts and, whatever else comes down the pipeline. So I'm just wondering, what should we put something there? If so, how much? Like, what's a realistic, given that these are volunteers, what might be a realistic number to share with people so they have an idea what the true commitment is?
You're on the KCCA.
Yes.
What do they allow?
They don't.
They don't
There's
have
no real.
I thought they did.
Not that I'm aware of.
Maybe they didn't let you know.
Maybe they did and I forgot during COVID.
Very possible.
Just generally, a number that I see on a lot of volunteer boards is like 75% participation as a requirement. That is just something I've seen pretty frequently to set a standard. Granted, I don't think that gives people a good feel for like how much there will be to do. But in terms of having a set figure out there for an expectation, that's kind of what I see a lot for like volunteer board participation.
Sure.
In terms of promotion, that's the other open one, right? that was kind of just out there.
Yes.
I typically would encourage more of a should than like a hard requirement on that, just because it's, even if you put a hard and fast requirement on there, what expectation is there that they follow through on that? How do you determine that it's something that's totally arbitrary? Who knows if they're knocking on neighbors' doors or something like that? So that gets really tough to enforce upon.
Well, I was thinking more along the lines of taking the flyers around and dropping
Right.
them off places, you know, and lift some of that off of Nicole.
Right, there you go.
So some of that, and maybe that's something the community engagement committee could support too, or.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, like, we don't have like a set number, I would say, on ours, but like, and Nicole can say too, like, I would say we still have valid participation, and it's not always the same people doing it and stuff like that.
Yeah,
It's the people that we have on those boards that are willing to do that and to go do that work and stuff like that.
Yeah, and you could almost, if it was like a big push, count that as like an event participation relative
Right,
to
right.
like,
Yeah.
you know, but again,
And we like probably are missing 1 or 2 members maybe a month, if that.
Yeah, usually a pretty good participation. And,
Yeah.
depending on what the event is or so, whatever someone's expertise is, if they may take the reins and such, then assist.
Well, and this is less about keeping track and more about just being able, like you said, so people have a realistic vision of what their participation is. So it's not like we're going to be taking attendance necessarily and kicking people off the committee. I think it's just, like I said, being able to tell people, we have typically X number of events during the year. We would expect or hope that you would participate in, 7 of 10. whatever that is.
Would it help then on 13, I think you've got the wording right there. The expectation of committee members would be that they will actively participate in events and programs. And I know it's a little bit broad and ambiguous to some, but it's setting that thing, we're expecting you to be here. And I think one of the things too is we have as a commission, the mayor has some reappointments. If I notice somebody's not attending meetings, when it comes to the annual reappointments, I'm not going to put them on the list for you all for us to approve on a Monday night. But I think as a commission, not that we've ever, not my history that we've done it, that we've taken somebody off of something, but there is a little bit of teeth there too. I mean, we're trying to, that's such a fine line. And I know right where you're at of trying to get to that number, but maybe just something that's just very assumptive in that the expectations that committee members will actively participate in scheduled events and programs.
So leave out the percentage.
Yeah, you've got the wording right there, but I think maybe take that percentage out.
I would agree.
Because it might be really the expectation would be 100%, but life does happen for all of
Right.
us.
And what's the measurement of that? How are you going to measure, So I do like the wording in that though, Carol. I thought that was,
Well, and honestly, I mean, it would be nice to keep track just so we can do something like, recognitions and things
Don't we have that in
like
iCompass?
So-
We have that meeting tracking thing? I know for the commissioners we do,
Yeah, just commissioners because of.
or commissioners and mayor, I should say, yeah.
But we have an Excel spreadsheet that we use for the community CEC.
Yep.
They're supposed to be keeping track of, attendance because it falls under the boards and committees manual of, attendance policy.
Do you know, is there something within iCompass, if it's there for city commission, I'll go out on a limb here and make a broad assumption that that tracking mechanism is there to do it with the committees too?
No, because that does it on the city commission because of the voting and the
Okay,
attendance.
fair enough.
The attendance and voting
Okay.
under the city commission. So all of the other committees don't have.
Have that module? Okay. Maybe a suggestion here, have this one be pretty specific in that the expectation is that they'll actively participate in all scheduled events and programs, but acknowledging, and that's the one thing is that we have our commissioner's handbook that spells out the committees, and I'll come to that in a minute, but.
I mean, in terms of language, you could just write something like unless otherwise excused, and then just broadly give the committee the authority to excuse absences, much like we do here.
Yeah. Yep.
But then it kind of sets the tone of like, you're expected to be here.
Yeah. Yeah, and Commissioner, I'm following you. I mean, I think there's this fine line for Commissioner Glanville, there's this fine line of, yeah, we need to have you there if we're this is going to be hopefully an active committee. I believe it will be an active committee. We need to have people that are going to be at meetings and be active in the community outreach efforts. So
thoughts on 14 then, to Commissioner Gilbert's thinking, would we strike that and just put like actively participate in and promote events and programs?
I think
And
so.
make it all one?
I
I
think that
would.
makes sense.
Yep.
Okay.
I did have one other thing in there that I just wanted to bring up. The term limits on the members of the Parks and Rec Commission. My only concern about that is that with the Kennewick Hills School participation, it may be hard to get people that haven't served X amount of time, just because those are kind of more long-term. You know, if you want the superintendent there and he serves his 2 terms, but he's still there, that's my only concern with that.
Completely up to you folks.
yeah, that might be one to adjust there. What else, commissioners, as you've looked at this?
Just one question, did cultural opportunities get addressed, Carol? Do you remember?
Yeah, I did a little digging on that and actually had some good meetings with some folks more regionally. And I think it makes sense to keep cultural in there because that would then encompass things like public art, getting maybe some public art in the parks. We've talked about doing that in the trail under the pedestrian tunnel. And then again, kind of assisting with some of the concert stuff and whatever else might come up culturally. I mean, if we look at these videos of what they're doing in Sterling Heights and Rochester, there's maybe some opportunities to do. I mean, I think it's good to keep it in there just as an opportunity, but certainly open to discussion.
I think if we're considering that, it's probably one thing, and we know we're going to be reviewing soon, the annual October, mid to late October has our handbook reflected in there. And my one thing, I'd highlighted that area, but it's one thing is I want to have us have consistency amongst all committees. When we start saying, okay, Committee A is different than Committee B and then different than Committee C, we start to get a little bit of a foggy area that I don't think any of us are comfortable with. So I'm comfortable with that consideration in there, but I would like to see it reflected in the, maybe from the commissioner standpoint, the handbook. We're doing the appointing. We are. So if we're doing that appointing, I'd like to see that reflected in the handbook, but have it reflected because it's probably something, you know, for the things that we're considering, that should be the same for all committees, whether it's planning, ZBA, outside of, that it should reflect different demographics.
Oh, I'm
culture.
sorry, I thought we were on a different piece.
Oh, I'm sorry, jump back
Yeah,
up. You went to culture.
It was just a question of what's the charter of this committee?
Gotcha, so,
Are
sorry.
they working
I jumped
on
back up to
cultural
where I had
activities
things
or
I
not,
would-
or is some other committee doing it? I didn't know the answer when we talked about it.
Yeah, I don't think another committee does cultural activities.
so that's what
unless-
I'm-
I mean,
Gotcha,
again,
fair.
maybe a little bit with the community engagement, but that's more direct.
Businesses.
Yeah,
I like it.
Well, and they could be work in conjunction too.
right, that's what I'm thinking, they could.
Okay. No, I'm fine on the way on that one.
Mayor, did you want to say something to the mission, vision, values, or what was it? you
Yeah, I
were-
think just up on top, the first 3, 1, 2, and 3. One, I have a challenge with unless it's worded as such they're either from the local school district or the county park district, for instance. I do not want to be appointing people from different municipalities that don't live in the city and don't have a vested interest in the city, meaning a school district, a county park employee. So for me, that's where I have a little bit of a challenge, number one, but I think it might be just the wording because number 3, it does make sense to have, I mean, that's the reality of this, as I was just taking Noah through our walk around the city central complex this afternoon. You know, that park in back of us is something that the school district leases to us. We work in partnership with the school district and have a long-standing, very strong relationship with them. So obviously, as they have in years past, whether that's the superintendent, whether it's the soup for finance, somebody else from the school staff, school leadership staff, that's fine, but unless it's school district or park district. And is it Grand Rapids Park District or is it Kent County Park District? And I know it's getting into nuances, but I'm thinking of people that come from behind us. I want to make sure that we're understanding. Again, I'll go back to the other municipality. Somebody in another municipality that might not have any direct connection to our city outside of some interest in wanting to serve, that might be fine, but they might not understand our city and the dynamics, and I feel like we're setting them up to fail, not to succeed at that point by appointing them.
So are you talking about, I'm sorry, so you're looking at number 3?
1 and 3 kind of, I think, go hand in hand.
They do.
So for me, I'm not real big on number 1. Number 3, I'm fine with.
So, okay, so maybe we combine 1 and 3, because I feel like they're the same, I mean, they're very similar. I mean, if
I
we're
think it's the
gonna,
same spirit.
if we're gonna appoint people who are from local school districts, they may not be residents of Walker.
Correct. Our school
So-
superintendent from
right,
both districts
so
don't live within Walker.
It probably needs to be said that the majority, so if we have 10, that'd be 6 of 10.
Mhm.
And then up to 4 could be from outside agencies.
But those specific,
Right.
yep.
And isn't that what we have
Yeah,
here?
yeah, that's what you have there, yep.
So I'm sorry, what is it that
So I
you're,
think just combining those two,
Okay.
but not as a separate, because I think somebody might misconstrue the spirit of number 1, not connecting it to number 3.
got it.
But I think they're one and the same.
Okay.
What I think was the intent
All right.
behind what was on there.
So combine 1 and 3.
Yep.
Okay.
And then you could actually say like 10 members, 6 being city residents.
Well, the members are listed above, yeah, it's kind of, I think part of it is just like the structure of, it's a little janky, like these things can be.
And I'm personally am fine with item number 2 because, but I'll go back to as we update our elected officials handbook and we're doing committee appointments. It's in there right now, but I think it's in a different time and different context. And I think that is something that's 2021, almost 2022. Our worlds have changed a bit, and I think a acknowledgement of that we have to be more sensitive to making sure that everybody has an opportunity to have a seat at the table if they'd like to do that. So I'm fine with that in there. But as we go to do the elected officials handbook, just a reminder to us, let's make sure this is in there for all the committees. Might not always work out that, planning commission would be one. For me, a prerequisite is you've got to have some type of architecture, engineering, or building career experience really to be up there, real estate possibly even, to be up there, because I think there's transferable skills. To put somebody else up there without that background, we tend to set them up for challenges with, as I look at our community development director, she'll say, why did you appoint this person? And they have absolutely no background. and we struggle through Wednesday nights. We want to make sure we don't do that, but be sensitive to what we're trying to accomplish. The spirit is making sure everybody has a fair seat at the table. So I'm fine with that as it is. I just want to make sure we get it in the other book. Is that fair?
Yeah, I
For everybody?
appreciate that.
Okay.
Another outstanding question is on page 3. So it's section, let me see. Oh, wait. I'm looking at the notes. Sorry, I was looking at the red line. It's item B, same section 4, item B. So the plan is to, get the Parks and Rec master plan consistent with the DNR resource standards. But then I wondered too, if there needed to be something specific, since we're specifically asking or talking about the master plan for the Parks and Rec, what about the involvement of this committee in the community center that we've been talking about? Since that's where recreation is housed in the city?
I think as we get closer
Should
to
we-
this, go ahead.
I was just wondering if it should be like specifically that this committee will be actively engaged in that process, just like they are with this updating of the master plan?
My thoughts on that are just that I would caution us against putting into into the resolution something that's kind of a one-off instance. You know, as the group that's kind of taking it on, we all, I guess, have that understanding that we're going to want that to be a part of it. But if we put it in there, then that's in there 20 years from now, and who knows what the role of the Parks and Rec Committee is at that point, and if we ever get back around to another renovation of the recreation center, who knows what that looks like.
And we could I'm not advocating for this, I always have to play what ifs. That's our job as policymakers up here. But think of a what if too. What if we have, heaven forbid, it, can't even to say it, but we have to think of it, 2008 happened with a recession. And that gets put on hold, but we have it in here. That might not see the light of day for our 10 years up here. And I'd hate to have somebody burdened with, but we're going to review this often enough, I think, as part of the handbook every fall.
Well, and it's probably included in number 4, where it says the purpose is to engage and advise planning administration, of everything, right? Parks, trails, facilities, and rec programming.
Well, I think I think the spirit, not only anyways, would disagree that they'd have a seat at the table in that planning piece.
Yeah, and I think what's going to happen is that community center, whatever happens over there, will be part of the Parks and Rec plan at some point. It'll be one of the projects identified, so kind of you're going to fall into that anyways.
Yep.
But we already have the committee set up with the commissioners right now, and we're getting close to the final report. So,
yep.
Just one comment on the appointment or committee membership. I think it might be wise to say jumping around back up to 4A. Might be the committee consists of up to 10 members, because I'm curious, we have sometimes trouble finding enough members to serve, and I wouldn't want to wait until we find 10 members to appoint to get this started.
That's a good comment.
Good point. Thank you. So the last one I was looking at was item C under part 4. And it says work with city staff, and maybe that's broad enough to cover it, but I just want to make sure we're covering everything. Because again, I understand that, everybody's involved in Parks and Rec management, DPW, all of those folks. So is the wording here broad enough to cover all that? Because it says recreation programs, events, and activities, but it doesn't talk about like maintenance, safety, I don't know how much, does it manage cover all that? I just want to make sure that there's, so that, again, maybe people coming onto the committee recognize that there are all of these different roles that they might be unaware of or something like that.
Would you be comfortable with, in that opening sentence, says the committee will work with city staff to strategize, and if I could make a suggestion here, staff to strategize and support all City of Walker recreation programs, events, and activities. Because organize and manage kind of takes that out of Michelle's hands right now, takes it out of my, could go down the list there.
Yeah.
But that's broad enough that the spirit and the intent of it is such. So.
Oh, and then part 5 underneath there, there's a sentence fragment at the end.
No.
Again, I wasn't quite sure how to word that. And it came to me, I was like, ooh, and land acquisition. So.
I live in a glass house, I don't judge there, Commissioner.
Well, being a former language instructor, I notice these things. So I wasn't, like I said, it was just in the wording. I just wanted to make sure that we're recommending, and maybe it's a separate thing, but it was recommending not just the purchase and rental of equipment, but also land, advising on land acquisition or potential land acquisition.
So maybe a thought here is we're getting close to 7 o'clock hour. I mean, we can continue this into the 7 o'clock. At this point, do we feel we've given Commissioner Glanville and Frank, if need be, from a city staff support, enough to draft a final resolution draft for the first meeting in October? Do we feel like we're there? Okay. And are you comfortable with?
Yeah, I would just, I kind of skipped over the mission, vision, and values, and that's the core of the committee. Okay. So I just want to make sure and we can take it up at 7 o'clock. I just want to make sure that if anybody has comments or suggestions on those three, that they are heard as well.
Okay.
So-
Why don't we slide those in at 7 o'clock? We'll slide these in after item 10, after the second public comment piece, if
Sure.
that's all right.
Yeah, yep.
We'll come right back to that. Parks and Rec. We'll pick up the Roundabout Island maintenance then as well. All right, it is 7 o'clock on the nose. Welcome to our City Commission meeting for September 27th, 2021. I'd like to ask Commissioner Groders to please deliver the invocation this evening.
Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful day and for bringing us together this evening. We are grateful that we can work together as a team, and we are grateful for our staff who are so committed to our city. Please give protection to our public safety staff and all who work to protect our freedom. Thank you for all those who continue to serve in these challenging times. Guide our decisions this evening. Keep us all focused on our common goal of improving quality of life for our community members, and above all, keep us committed to serving with integrity in all that we do. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I'd like to invite the audience to stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. If I could please ask our clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Carey,
Present.
Commissioner Burke,
Present.
Commissioner Gilbert,
Present.
Commissioner DeShane,
Present?
Commissioner Glanville,
Present.
Commissioner Groders,
Present.
and Commissioner Chase.
Present.
Thank you.
All right. Next on the list is the approval of the September 13th, 2021 City Commission meeting minutes. If there's no discussion on said item, I'll entertain a motion for approval and support, please.
So moved?
I'll support.
Groders and Commissioner DeShane. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The minutes are approved. Next on the list is public comment on agenda items and agenda items only. Is there anyone in the public wishing to speak on anything on the agenda this evening? Going once, going twice. All right, thank you. Consent agenda next, or first one on the list is expenditures in the amount of $11,638,492.11. You want to touch that one?
Sure, yeah. Well, about 10.6 million of that is pass-through tax dollars that we collect for the other taxing jurisdictions that we collected in September. So we collect it and hand it all back out. So it's not that we're spending that on all of our city operations. So, and the million that's remaining, about 500,000 of that is actually tax revenue to the city. So the bill portion of it is about 400,000 or so, kind of as usual.
We have normalcy there.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's a big number when you see the 11.6, but unfortunately, we just don't get to keep all that.
All right. Well, good enough. Any questions on that? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion for approval and support, please.
Mayor, I did choke on that number, but after the questions were,
Okay.
after the questions were answered, after I talked to these two gentlemen, they explained it all to me, I'm now prepared to motion to approve the expenditures for the
I'll support.
Thank you, Commissioner Burke and Commissioner Chase. Any other discussion on the bills? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Bills can get paid. Thank you. Next on the list, and also our clerk pretty understood, I think we've heard about this for a little while now, is Resolution 21-612 is moving Ward 2 Precinct 6 from Mount Olive Church over to Remembrance Church, just a simple location change.
That's correct. It's a permanent location change because Mount Olive voided their contract because the building is, they may be selling, so. So we reached out to Remembrance and we were able to get a contract signed with them.
There's even been some change in churches over there a little
Yeah.
bit lately, so,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Any questions, commissioners, for our clerk? Otherwise, entertain a motion for approval and support, please.
I'll make a motion.
Commissioner DeShane,
Support.
Commissioner Glanville. All those, any other discussion on that? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. Resolution 21-612 is passed. Next on the list is Resolution 21-613, and this is the approval of Summerbrooke Estates Phase 2. Tricia, welcome. Good to see you on a Monday night.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe I could use the mouse or if.
It's weird, Frank's
Okay.
got it.
Come on down.
So I'll just present from right here. I see our applicant is here. So we have on your agenda tonight the second phase of Summerbrooke Estates, and this is the review of the final preliminary plat. And so the action being requested by the City Commission tonight is to review the final preliminary plat for Phase 2 of Summerbrooke Estates, Units 26 through 47, and to provide an approval, denial, or tabling of the request. And the property address for this second phase of the plat is at 910 Kinney. The lot size is approximately 10.06 acres, and it's currently zoned SA, suburban residential, single family. And future land use designation for this piece is residential growth, 2 to 4 units per acre. And this is generally located on the east side of Kinney Avenue, south of Leonard Street. And we have Kyle Visker from Land and Resource Engineering. And I'm not sure if Ron is here tonight, just Kyle. So Kyle's the engineer working on the project. And so here's the layout for Phase 2. Again, we're looking at units 26 through 47. I've highlighted these purple areas to show where there is some common elements that will be shared among the owners of the plat. And I know you guys don't look at this every day, so I'm just going to run through, kind of a overview of the platting process. So we've already done tentative preliminary plat. You saw this at one of your previous meetings. This is where we're just looking at the overall lot layout, making sure it complies with the subdivision ordinance, and also making sure that the plan is feasible in terms of providing utilities, roads, and stormwater. So now we're at the step where we're looking at the final preliminary plat. So during this step in the platting process, the city engineer does an in-depth review of all of the civil drawings. We ask for certifications from other agencies, and in this case, we're looking at just the Kent County Drain Commission and Kent County Plat Board. And the Planning Commission provides a recommendation to the City Commission. And once after this meeting, if the City Commission is inclined to provide an approval tonight, then we'll move into the pre-construction road review and then road construction. Then you've got the final plat, which is one last step where the City Commission will revisit this. And this is after the final inspections of all of the roads and infrastructure. So then City Commission will review it again and provide an approval or denial or tabling. And then after all of that, building permits can be issued after public road acceptance and grading certification. So just a brief history of this particular project, for this phase anyway. On November 4 of 2020, tentative preliminary plat, the Planning Commission reviewed and gave a favorable recommendation to the City Commission. And then on November 23, 2020, the City Commission approved the tentative preliminary plat. Then they moved on to the next stage, which is final preliminary plat on March 3rd of this year. And that item was tabled at the Planning Commission because there were still some issues that needed to be worked out with stormwater management. So then on the June 16th Planning Commission meeting, they forwarded a favorable recommendation to the City Commission for the approval of the final preliminary plat. And then just a refresher here on where this piece of land is located. So here's Leonard Street, and here's Kinney. This is phase 1, which was approved. I think final approval was in 2017. So this is right along the Fred Meyer Standale Trail, and somewhat close to the Lincoln Country Club. So just a summary of the improvements that are proposed as part of this phase of the plat. This is 22 single-family lots ranging in size from 11,080 square feet and 16,662 square feet. They're obviously proposing utilities, public utilities, and stormwater. In plats, stormwater management is under the jurisdiction of the Kent County Drain Commission. And they have a detention basin for phase 2 that was constructed as part of phase 1. They're also proposing sidewalks. They will be planting street trees, public roads. Originally, Thornwick was going to cross Kinney and continue on to Sydney, but that was an issue for the assessors because of mail delivery, north-south versus east-west road. So they renamed it to Bonnie Stu Drive. They're also adding streetlights, and then they'll have some common areas. So the developer has some obligations that are required in order to be able to get final preliminary plat approval. One of them is final acceptance letter of the final preliminary plat from the Kent County Plat Board. They've provided us with a tentative letter, which at this point in time is acceptable. They also are responsible for giving us a draft of the association documents, outlining the maintenance responsibility and then any desired restrictive covenants for that phase. This is a little bit different from the first phase because there weren't any common elements, and we suggested that they place the larger detention area into common ownership because we didn't want it linked to just one parcel and have that be the responsibility of just one property owner in there. So because of this, we've asked them to provide us with some association documents and restrictive covenants, and which they have done, and our attorney has reviewed and provided comments, and our applicant provided us with the revised version to incorporate our attorney's comments. They've also needed to give us grading certification and individual grading plan sheets, so those have been provided, and a check in the amount of $10,800 for a street tree escrow, which we have received. And so this approval will be by resolution, and so I've prepared a draft resolution for you. And if the City Commission is inclined to grant final preliminary plat approval for this second phase of Summerbrook Phase 2, the next steps would be the pre-construction meeting and meeting with all the contractors that would be involved in the grading and constructing the roads and the utilities. And then mass grading and construction of public roads and utilities can occur at that point. Then the city will assume ownership of the public streets, utilities, sidewalks, public drainage after the city engineer's acceptance. And then there's the filing of the final plat with the clerk's office for signatures for the submission to the Office of Land Survey and Remonumentation. So that's the state agency. And this is who issues those giant Mylar plans. And then the official approval of the final plat will be at a subsequent City Commission meeting. So you'll see this one last time. And that's it for me.
All right, commissioners, any questions, comments?
Nice job. Thank you for putting that together. That really makes it very understandable. because there's a lot of moving parts with that.
Yeah. I was just gonna put this back to the map. In case anyone, oh, there we go, sorry.
Yeah, I drove through today. Phase 1 looks great, so I assume Phase 2 will look very similar to Phase 1.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
Commissioners, anything else? I applaud the approach on the detention basin, knowing that we've had some challenges over the years in that area, some of the developments. I think this is the really a pragmatic approach to problem solving in that area, so glad to see that. I guess with that and said, any other discussion on this? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion for approval and support on Resolution 21-613 on Summerbrooke Estates Phase 2 for 22 new single-family homes.
I'll make a motion.
Support.
Commissioner Chase, support for Commissioner Gilbert. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? All right, Resolution 21-613 is passed. Sorry to tickle there. All right, Trish, you're welcome to stay with us. Hang up here if you want. So next, let's come back to the Parks and Rec discussion, Commissioner Glanville. And we'll jump to that before we get to public comment.
All right, yeah, so as I mentioned, I just wanted to make sure we got input and feedback on the first three parts of the resolution. So item 1, mission, item 2, vision, and item 3, the values.
I'll just say we discussed it and like the words now.
Yeah, I appreciate your input on it too. Anybody? I'm waiting. This is wait time.
For my part, I'm comfortable with where it's at, so.
I'm very impressed.
And I think inclusion too is one of the things as we go to a motion for approval. Yeah, or actually, we'll ask you to come back to that final draft. Let's get that on that first October one. I think of the 3D, that are open, accessible to all. I think one of the things too that I had a resident explain. I happen to live in the same neighborhood as this resident, and talked about their daughter that is in a wheelchair and the lack of wheelchair seating and the ADA accessible for things like swing sets, and what a joy it brought to her life. And kudos to Michelle and Mary Kay, because there was a quick pivot on that to come up with a solution back for City Central Park and address that. So I think that's a very broad and spirited intent there, and applaud it. So I think that's, I'm glad to see that in there. So if you could, Commissioner, just then updates for us. Well done, all on this that contributed. And then if we could get that final draft, and I think with the wording, unless there's something material change for any of us up here, I think we could look at taking that to a resolution on our first meeting in October.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Are we comfortable with that all?
All right, thanks everyone.
All right, sailing through. Nice job. Let's take on next the discussion, Roundabout Island Maintenance. Mr. Wash, I know you were staying awake all night waiting for this.
Ready to roll. Okay, so here's what the Roundabout Island looks like right now. And we met out on site today. You can see us in this photo here. We met with DPW staff, Tom and Gary, and then 2 people from Everett's Landscape Management, and they take care of your DDA streetscaping and the tunnel maintenance. So we brought them out on site and said, how do we get this thing under control? And I'll explain things in a couple of seconds here about how it got to this point. But I wanted to show some images just to drive home the point that, there's a long tail on this project, and it goes all the way back to a plan probably in 2011, 2012 about how we're going to fix that intersection and put in some kind of a focal point. And that's when the roundabout came about. And then there was discussion about what should go in the center. At one time, it was going to be all hardscape with a brick sign that said, welcome to Walker kind of thing. But wasn't really enthused with that idea. So then they said, let's do an island planting, and we really didn't expect there to be kind of like a 6-foot elevation change in the middle. I was really surprised to see that. So when they said, let's do this, because it will catch cars very effectively, and it does that. It's caught, like a catcher's mitt, a couple of drunk drivers who have tried to go over the top. Or
Into that dirt, yep.
And it catches in the dirt, and actually the picture on the far right is where a car went through this past spring and was effectively caught. So if you remember, the reason for the roundabout years ago was because we were having fatal crashes and high impact angle crashes, and we wanted to stop those, obviously, and the roundabout has done that. But from a maintenance standpoint, this thing has gone through 3 iterations, and its original design was to manufacture a soil that would hold a lot of water. So that's just not topsoil out there. That's a engineered soil with a variety of different components out there so that it could support the original plantings, which were what we call xeriscaping, which is a concept that's used out west, which is let's use plants that require minimal maintenance. And you don't have to set up irrigation and fertilization. It'll look a bit shrubbier, but that was the original intent. So the soil that goes out there, we were just talking today, even without irrigation, if you put one of the soil testers 3-4 feet under the ground, the soil is really moisture rich. So it's designed appropriately. And if you remember when this thing first went in, we had a variety of roses in there, oh so easy roses, everblooms. We had orange and we had red. The oranges didn't do well. The reds were slow starters in the spring. But those were eventually taken out and replaced with some of the shrubs that you see in there now, which are kind of the golden-topped junipers, and then some of the other, those are called coral bells. And irrigation was also brought into the site by Public Works. So to say that it's been a moving target on the island is fairly, everyone has a different design idea. But I don't think this was the design idea. So received some complaints, and I think well justified that things are out of control out there. Underneath the yellow nutsedge and the various grasses that you can see growing in are some mature plants, and you can see some poking through out there. So the goal here is to bring in a consultant, private group, that the city is familiar with to get this island back to where it should be, which is to knock out all of the sedge, knock out all the wild grass and the other weeds, and get us back down to just the plants that we planted there. And this is a multiple step process, but it's probably time. So let me walk through a couple of things. Here's a couple of notes that we got from DPW. Their staffing is limited, and they've also had quite a bit of turnover. So we've lost some of that, the more veteran members who were really the maintenance people. And COVID has eliminated our community service workers, which was really the grunt work of going out onto the island and pulling things. And the DPW is definitely not designed for specialty landscape management, which is why outsourcing is done in the DDA for the streetscaping and for the tunnel. So with those 3 facts in our back pocket, here's our recommendations just to cut to the chase. For this fall, we would extend the contract with Everett's per a budget amendment and a new line item for expenses. And the scope would be to treat and remove the existing quote-unquote weeds and replant perennials damaged by crashes, which the money comes from insurance dollars. We've actually got those ordered, they just haven't been installed yet. And then DPW would put the fine tune on the end of the season, which is some basic pruning and cleaning things up at the end. But then for the 2022 growing season, we can do this one of 2 ways. We could either a continuation contract with Everett's, which is probably the simplest way to do it. Or we can bid back out via request for proposals and select a firm based off of the scope and the budget and those kind of things, which we're going to get anyway. But then the other growing season things that are really important, and I think this is the advantage of using a private firm, is we've established a treatment plan per month. And it really needs to be seasonal, that roundabouts in a very hot environment. You know, it sits out there and gets the hottest and the coldest and the salt and the wind. So we really need to put together a monthly treatment plan with preventative and treatment and maintenance plus fertilization. And then coordinate the watering schedule with DPW. A lot of the yellow nutsedge that you see out there now grows very well in a moist environment. So we need to get a hold of that prior to, because if we irrigate with that soil, it actually is a perfect environment for that type of plant to grow. And you see it out there now. And then we would also do replacement plantings as necessary. Underlying both of these bullet points here would be, we need to get in writing and approved by you folks most likely, a scope and a budget for each one of these things. And when we do that, I think the fall 2021 thing will come together very quickly. But then for next year, I think I would like to do it right and make sure that we get a nice, short but detailed scope and budget so that we don't get to this point again. Because I'm aware, as from the original design, that island is really a focal point for the entrance to Remembrance Road and the city complex. So we want to do it right and make it look good. And if you saw earlier this year, it did look pretty good. I think it just got a little bit out of hand. We had some issues going on internally with staffing. So.
Well, the community service workers piece is not just, you know, impacting us out there. It's around all of our city grounds. We use them for our newer commissioners. We use those community service workers for so many things in our city buildings, our city grounds, and that's hurt this past, you know, we're going on almost 2 years with it, without utilizing them for some pretty essential services. So, so probably what you're asking for us tonight is an approval to move forward with details on this. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think for the fall, we can easily, I think, depending on what the cost is, incorporate that into our parks line items currently, and then as we go through the budget next year, we'll probably develop a line item as Frank suggested. We have a tunnel line item right now for maintenance of the tunnel, and I'm anticipating doing the same or grouping those two together in the next budget. But I think this fall, I don't think it's going to be a ton of money that we won't be able to incorporate currently into our parks budget.
Could we have those as separate GL numbers?
Yeah,
by
probably.
chance? Okay.
Yeah, I'll talk to Dan.
I'm thinking on a go-forward basis from the accounting.
Yep.
Okay. So I think, Commissioners, I'm going to look left to right here. Any concerns with doing this?
Oh, that's good. I like the tunnel.
Okay. Yep. All good coming around here? Okay, so should we do a voice vote on this for approval? You've got 7-0 right up here right now. So I said, so let's, at this point, then let's start to get into the details on this. An extension of our DDA contract with Everett. So we satisfy our RFP requirements of things we need to do as a city. And I think maybe on the go forward when we get this all settled, I'd like to see it as a separate line item on the GL, on the chart of accounts. So.
Agreed. That's part of the detangling of the budget that you folks have been doing for the past 5 years and identifying different line items, and so I agree with that. And if it's okay with you folks, what we'll do is we'll start working with Everett's tomorrow, and it will look bad before it looks better because they're going to have to knock down all of that material. So just be patient. Please feel free to shoot any questions to me, and then on the backside, what I'll do is bring forward whatever scope and budget is coming through just to make sure that you folks are aware of what's happening.
Okay.
Can we get some social media on that? Just like a beautification or something, make it, let people know that we're,
We can put a note out about it's going to look better.
Well, I think sharing the why behind it. I mean, we had significant impacts there from us. And no, I mean, it's our DPW team does a phenomenal job, and they try, but that is, we have 5 million other things of sometimes of a higher priority. I'll just call that what it is. And it means patching holes in roads and fixing broken things. This sometimes doesn't get to that top of that list. So.
Yeah, and I know from my first year at MDOT, I was on the watering, so we had to go out there and we'd spend probably 6 hours out there just watering all the trees and pulling all the weeds, and then we'd only do that twice a season. So it takes a long time to do that for sure. And there was 3 of them working, so I know the time commitment that goes into that.
The key is, keep in mind that your Public Works Department, right from the beginning of this, said, hey, we really don't do that. And it kind of got pushed on them. So I totally understand where they're coming from, which is, we're not landscapers. They're very much, do quick jobs. And this one is a detailed job. And I think if this firm can help us get the nutsedge particularly under control with the pre-emergent, then we won't have what we had this year, which was it looked pretty good until nutsedge hit its peak in late July. And that's when it just goes.
Yep.
So with the right maintenance plan, we will make it look much better next year.
All right. You have the support you need on that, so we're good there. So we've covered everything on committee of the whole at this point. I'll open up any other public comment on said items. All right, Noah, I'm going to put you on the spot for a minute. So I was sharing with Noah a little bit earlier, and he was talking with Commissioner Glanville. One of my weaknesses is not forgetting when I can't coach anymore because of schedules, and continue to do it year after year. And I get to see a lot of teenagers, both male and female, that rise to the top, that are highly articulate, very personable and so forth, and have just had an extremely pleasurable afternoon with Noah. He is in the 11th grade at Sacred Heart Academy on the west side, lives in Jenison, but through the American Legion in Walker had applied for the Boys State program, was approved for this, and that was part of what today is. And he has some questions today I don't think maybe I've asked in some of our departments as we were making tours, so it's been a good time. But I'm going to put him on the spot, and I was going to share with him, ask him to share with all of us maybe a takeaway or two he had from the day today. And he shared these a little bit earlier with us when we were having a bite to eat, and I think we all kind of dropped our jaws a little bit because we heard something that we don't hear often enough. I think we all know it up here. So completely unsolicited, right? This was out of your mouth, so it was pretty cool to hear that. So there's a little bit about your experience. Anything you want to share about getting involved with the Boys State program with the Legion?
Yeah, for sure. I just want to thank Mr. Parsons and you, Mayor Carey, for giving me a tour. And one thing I found is that the stigma of this convoluted bureaucracy, it doesn't apply here at all. You don't have unlimited resources. You don't have unlimited, money, of course. And because of that, you have to be resourceful and you have to work really hard to make our community better. And that's been really encouraging to see. You don't just sit there stamping papers. I'm sure there is some paper stamping, but you really care about your profession. And even in the short time I've been able to, spend with you and meet some of you, it's been really encouraging for me, and it's been inspiring. What can I do? How can I be resourceful and give back to my community, and maybe even try to be an elected official one day as well. But that's just an aspiration. But seeing all of you work so hard has been really inspiring. So I just want to thank you for that.
I appreciate it. Well, welcome to the city. We're getting to the tail end here, and we'll get a chance to all introduce ourselves to you right afterwards. But thank you for joining us today. Been a pleasure to have you. And I think one of the things that stuck out was not just your comments, so we were getting something to eat, but was over even in the fire department. And some of the financial metrics questions you asked were very unbecoming of an 11th grader, and showed that I think that maturity and awareness you have on things much greater than you. So glad to have you here today, and I think we can all be rest assured that if this is what our future is in front of us, it's a good thing. So
thank you so much.
All right, good. Thanks, Noah. All right, one last time, any other public comment for those out here? And Bill Parsons, thank you again, as always, for joining us, being such a support of our community. Commissioner, City Manager comments. We'll start over on the left.
Sure, I'll keep it brief. Really all revolving around the finance department. After paying all the bills of the $11.5 million, the auditors were here last week, so they were doing field work all week. So Dan's still recovering on the tails of collecting taxes and dispersing that and doing the audit. So we're awaiting the results of that. It'll probably be a few weeks yet before we see those, and then we'll have a presentation from Doug and firm. We were also notified last week we have the first batch of ARPA money in our account, so Dan will be setting up a separate account for that, and then we'll decide how we're going to spend that. So we'll be regrouping once we do some calculations and get some final rulings done, so that'll be coming through to the commission/finance committee this fall yet, so you can provide us some direction on that. So that's about all I have. And for Nicole, the pumpkin bash obviously is this weekend. So
Awesome, thank you. Mr. Walsh, nothing?
Heard enough from me.
All right, as usual, thank you. Commissioner Burke?
I will be bashing pumpkins on Saturday, and I'm in DC each of the next 3 weeks, so I'm going to have to request permission to miss the 11th October, I believe it is, City
Okay.
Commission meeting. Thanks, Mayor.
Understood. Thank you. Commissioner Shane?
I plan on bashing pumpkins with you.
All right.
I don't think that's really what we do, though.
Oh.
And also, I'm very happy with the continued improvements that are going on with Kinney, as it's almost finished. And everybody's very, very anxious in my neighborhood, myself included, but your team has been doing a great job.
You want to come to that one? You want to do?
no, we'll pass that on. And
Okay,
we
thank you.
hope to have the paving done this week. They have a great week of weather, so we're hoping by the end of the week we should be open by the time. Don't quote me on that.
I'm not.
So-
Yep. Cool. Thank you. Commissioner Chase? All right. Commissioner Groders? MML stuff?
MML just, there was a lot of information, a lot of emphasis on the ARP money, and just encouraging people to think long-term, not just to spend it, but to invest and where it's going to have a long-term impact. And I know that we'll do that, and I didn't realize that we have so much time. We don't have to actually say what we're going to spend it on until 2024, and then till 2026 to actually use it. So there's no need to rush, so that was encouraging. There was a lot of talk about affordable, attainable housing, auxiliary ADUs, auxiliary dwelling units, thank you. And I know that we touched on that last time, and so that's going to be that's an ongoing discussion for everyone, all communities.
Yep.
So, that is all.
Thank you. Commissioner Glanville?
Yeah, I got a few things. So first, I'd like to thank folks over in I'm probably getting the department wrong, but I had a I want to say CDD, but maybe that's not right. Ordinance. I had a resident call with some concerns about a construction site, and they just got on it right away, like the nenext day, to go out and do some inspecting and let me know what was going on over there. So I just really appreciate the responsiveness, because I know we do have a lot of things going on. And and a very thorough response as well. They shared the notes with me and the ordinances and all the background, so that I could turn around and explain that back to our residents. So I really just appreciate the level of attention to that. And then another resident conversation I just wanted to bring back to the table here. We heard at the Lincoln Lawns, the most recent Lincoln Lawns discussion that we had, we heard a number of residents talk about potential traffic calming options for the neighborhoods there with Maple Row and such. And so I had a resident reach out to me on that as well, and so that will be handed over to the traffic committee to discuss, since it's not really a part of, expecting the developer to upgrade our streets. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
So just a heads up to everyone that that's going to be on the November 9th traffic committee agenda. And Commissioner Gruters, I can fill you in on some of that. I mean, it's the same conversation we had, but anyway. And then I was talking to the mayor over the weekend, and just want to give you all a heads up on that. I'm going to be inviting Darbas, who is the director of the, oh gosh, let me get his title right, DPW.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Which is the department that oversees all of the waste handling within the city, and is working with the county on the Sustainable Business Park. Which I realize when I say those things, it might not sound familiar to you. I mean, you hear the Sustainable Business Park, but what is that? So they are prepared to do a presentation, and so I'm going to be inviting Dar out to speak with us, hopefully at that one of our October meetings. So I'll be reaching out to him so you can understand there's a couple things at play. One, of course, is the ongoing, project work around the Sustainable Business Park and what it's going to mean to us, not just today, but I learned in our recent meeting that if we don't get something taken care of, we're going to be on the hook for these landfills until the year 2090. So that's a long ways into the future, in my mind. Just understanding that it's not just about making a decision today, but, it's something that's going to affect the region for years to come, and what we need to be talking about. In the interim, however, we have been putting off raising what they call tipping fees on trash collection, and because we have been subsidizing that for a number of years now, the check is coming due. So there's going to be an increase in tipping fees. The question is how much, and that will affect prices for everybody. So just getting a handle on what all of that means and what the options are and different things that are going on. So we'll be able to talk to our residents about that a little bit more clearly. And then finally, I had reached out hoping to attend the DEI training for staff members and was reminded I'm not a staff member. And there are some power dynamics at play there where, probably I shouldn't be in those meetings. So I appreciate that. And so I was hoping, and again, I talked to Mayor about this over the weekend, and am hoping that we can get the same training for us as a group. And so just wanted to put that out there, maybe hear some thoughts on that. If others are interested in the DEI training, I think it's important, not just in and of itself, but particularly that the staff is getting that training, that we are, at least at the same level with them and understand what they're learning, what their expectations might be, and then how we can adjust what we do to, to move with them on that. So Lisa, I just kind of wanted to throw that out there.
I have some thoughts, but I'll defer to the group. Any comments beforehand? I see you reaching.
No, I think it's fine. I don't see any issue with it. I think is something, it probably isn't the same necessarily for us. We have a little bit different role, but something equivalent would be fine, I think. I think there's certainly a purpose for it.
And we discussed that over the weekend. This is probably something, again, we're in 2021, almost 2022, and this is probably a very good thing for us to invest in ourselves. So I had said to Commissioner Glanville I would support it. My suggestion is to do it as part of our strategic planning session when we get that together here. I don't think we're not even a quarter out from that probably. Would you think, Daryl? Maybe right after the first of the year?
I would think after first January, February timeframe.
Okay.
Is what we tried to do in the past.
Yeah. I might advocate a little bit for Gracie Harkman was picked. Her firm was actually picked by the police department to begin with. That wasn't expanded to city staff, and it'd probably be good from a consistency standpoint, and it might help us to not just the consistency, but to see a very similar approach, I think. Because I think there's different groups and different people that are going to teach it a different way, and it's probably good as we're working together with one another that we have consistency there. So, so I'm fine with that. So I think strategic planning would be the plan for that.
So can you expand on that? What do you mean by strategic
So
planning?
we got off obviously the rails with COVID,
Right.
But our resetting our commission priorities, where our investment's going to be at, and we get a facilitator, third-party facilitator that basically we do the whiteboard exercises, what have you. So obviously last year presented some very year and a half challenging dynamics. So we're long overdue for that, I think, as a group.
So are you saying do that training before strategic
Or
planning?
as part of that, but it would be a little bit longer session, or maybe about the same time.
Maybe I'm not understanding exactly, but I think it would be beneficial for us to do that prior to strategic planning so we can apply some of the.
Could be.
I think that would be the time for us
I
to
think from a
apply
time
some of
commitment
that.
right now, for me, anything extra outside of our commission meetings, January, November, or October, November is not going to happen. Then we hit the holidays for December. So after we had talked, I had briefed the city managers. We thought it would be right after the start of the year would be. I think that's
No, I mean, I completely, I understand that. Like I said, I just think it would be nice to have the training in advance of strategic
No
planning.
problem with
so.
that. Maybe, why don't we do this, look at, let's start talking about a January timeframe, maybe third week of January or something, maybe
Okay.
in lieu of our commission work session.
Yeah,
Is that fair?
yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. And then our strategic planning in February timeframe, so,
Yeah, appreciate it.
cool. All right. All good? All right, Commissioner Gilbert?
I had intended to go to the MML conference and did not make it. I feel poorly on that, but I did meet up with all of the MML Government Affairs folks afterwards and have some good conversation with them. I got the abridged version of the conference, so that's fine. Tipping fees is a very interesting discussion that has a lot to do with the work at the state. In 2018, we had a really robust discussion on tipping fees, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with it this time around. It's a huge issue. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops. But I did catch up with Commissioner Steck on the Sustainable Business Park. He was making a point that we should have some discussion on that, or that we should get up to date on it. So if you have someone coming to talk about those issues, that is probably much to our benefit. The other state thing, the state budget got approved, my boss's bill.
Thank you for the heavy lifting there.
5% increase to constitutional revenue sharing, 2% for statutory. So all good things, but I think we were working off of a base here that was not super good. So could be better. On local stuff, I did have a couple of residents in English Hills talk to me about some issues with the developers. They've started kind of doing some sampling within it's within the property. It's at the edge of the property line, but it's within kind of that area that was maintained by the association, the condo association. And they've got like hard infrastructure in that space. So they've got like a sprinkler system set up and some other things. So they're just worried about them accidentally hitting something and hitting some of that fixed infrastructure. And I know the developer had agreed to not develop into that space, and he was going to leave it alone to that line. So that's just it's kind of a minor issue, but nothing bad has happened yet, but as long as they can just be cognizant of that. That would be the point. And I know it sounds like there are new plans coming. I think I heard third week of October, Planning Commission's going to have a final area site plan review. So we'll look forward to seeing what that looks like. In terms of other Planning Commission stuff, we did have a review of an expansion of the Jason Ridge condos, but the expansion was tabled because there is some antiquated statutes that require for a condo association to be expanded or include the next development. It has to be within 6 years of the previous phase of that development. But due to the 2008 recession, that didn't occur with this project, obviously. It's been something more like 12 to 15 years, probably in that range. So they're having some issues with the developers proposing 2 separate condo associations, but obviously that's not ideal for the existing condo owners having this conflicting jurisdictional thing. So probably some more discussion has to happen on that, but they think they have some ideas about how to get around that and make it all work, but they're having a lot of fun figuring it out. It was a very tense planning commission meeting on the subject of the condo associations. And then the only other thing we approved an expansion of Cambridge Grove. That's phase 3 of that project, and it does circle back to that Richmond-Wilson intersection. And we will look forward to further discussion on that improvement, which we would very much like to see in the near future.
Awesome. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Nothing really for me, but I saw Commissioner Gilbert had the MML. Very nice magazine, so everybody should read it. Yep. It really focuses on the municipal clerks and the role that we have in elections and everything, the role we play. So thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. And our communications manager is in the audience. I know it's past your bedtime probably, but is it, we don't get to see you here this late normally. Any updates you want to share? You've done a great job getting Pumpkin Bash around.
Just, excited for everyone's participation. The weather's looking amazing. The first one in a couple of years. I should have said that. But, yeah, so excited to see everyone come out. So really do appreciate everyone who's taken time out of their Saturday to be part of this. So thank you.
Awesome. Good, thank you. Well, I'll bring us home. A couple quick things. I promised no by 8 o'clock. Otherwise, it was a bad meeting. Those are my words, right? Okay, thank you. So, a couple quick things. On the tipping fees, I'm looking forward to having Dar here. One of the things I'd share with Commissioner Glanville, I said it's the mayor's pre-COVID and then kind of get derailed with COVID, other priorities in there. But there's been some discussion a little bit as of late amongst the mayors. We're fairly unified and wanted to hold the county more accountable for the financing end of it and the townships. Because right now, the 6 cities are bearing all of the cost for this. And when we have townships bigger than us within this county, as big or bigger, maybe even financially, maybe a little bit more possibly, I don't know. They've got to have some investment in this. So we're not budgeting on that one, and I think there's still some, how much do we actually put in versus the county? It's not a burden on the local municipalities, but good conversation, but we need to educate ourselves before we start jumping. So I know the 6 mayors had met at different times in different sized groups with the chair and the county chair, the vice chair, a handful of times over it. And I just had a recently one with our county chair, and that topic had come up as well. So I think our point's pretty well known, but it's something that we are, there is a bit of a stopwatch on this one to get to a point, but let's not just rush into it without a pragmatic solution to things. So. Secondly, I'm going to be a little more direct on the comment on Kinney Avenue. Staff has done phenomenal, and I feel bad for Scott in a way because it seems like he wants to hide around the corner when someone's come walking about what's the update. My suggestion, I'm going to be very candid here, based on something that took place today with the general contractor that was approved for the project. There's one general contractor and one sub. The sub is actually in this area that I'm going to recommend to the commission on go-forward basis for bid approvals. We do not approve. This has been absolutely embarrassing. It's disappointing. I feel for our residents. I feel for our businesses. I think of Commissioner DeShane, getting in and out of there. It should have gotten paved today, and the contractor called it off with no reason. There is absolutely no reason. It is a piss poor performance, and I'm not going to accept it on behalf of our residents. So, we have a general contractor, and we have in the subs that they use, there's one specifically that's in my crosshairs. So just as one voice up here, but I can assure you going forward, that's going to be one, they're going to get line items stricken out. So, anyway. I spoke my piece on it. We don't need to mention names. We'll come to that down the road.
I just want to interject. We're just happy that the road has got a better surface.
You could drive.
Okay? I'm just happy. I mean, from what we've been enduring since the end of May till present, we know that the final light is at the end of the tunnel. But we're very, very pleased right now that we can get in and out of there without too much of a conundrum.
And whether it's my place or not, conversation I had with Nicole was, I said, no more social media updates. The residents have lost faith and confidence in the city, and it's not the city's fault in any way, shape, or form. It is. I'm going to throw the contractor under the bus because they should be thrown under the bus. So we can't put updates out there if people aren't going to believe what's out there. So that's kind of the update. Senior Neighbors had a good. Daryl, Frank, and I had ended up having to have a remote meeting with Bob Barnes, the CEO over at Senior Neighbors, and it sounds like the ship's moving in a very good direction for Station 3 as a potential senior center, the upstairs there. So more to come on that. We're going to do a walkthrough later this month. I've asked Commissioner Groders, because of some connections she's had, to represent us up there and join us in that tour and discussion. We'll have Meals on Wheels up there with us. We have to look at the kitchen setup in there. There's a number of nuances like floor drains and so forth for industrial kitchens. But staff will be there, the managers. I'm jumping in just to be a little bit of the glue between all the groups there. And I'm optimistic we're going to be able to come to a point where the senior neighbors are able to utilize a new location in the city that's more practical for both parties.
Thank you.
Yep, so I didn't want to let the night go without that being said. And then lastly, leave on a good note for the night, was that Nicole and I had attended the Grand Rapids Chamber Breakfast with Legislators meeting this morning, and it was nice with the witness in the room. We had a shout out from the chamber for our initiatives and support for more housing within the city of Walker, and it was us and Grand Rapids both recognized. And it was nice to hear that, and I think, okay, tonight we just approved 22 more units, moving to that next step, and we're trying, but we're not just rubber stamping that, as Noah had mentioned earlier. I think we're being very cautious and controlled about the residential development. The industrial foot's on the gas pedal because we've got the room, and where it's zoned, it makes sense. Let's get it done. But the residential piece is one that I think we can all take some pride in. We're doing a pretty darn good job there in making sure that we're increasing our housing stock to meet the demands and needs of our community. So nice job, everybody, on that. Unless there's any other comment, I'll entertain a motion for approval to adjourn. Motion for approval to adjourn and support.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Commissioner Gilbert. Support.
Support.
Commissioner Groders. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed?